Hi, good evening, everyone. I think we can go ahead and get started. I am Dr. Thais Bingham-Hickman, Associate Director of the Leadership Alliance, and it is my privilege to welcome you to our 7th installment in a conversation with the Doctoral Scholar. In these conversations, we feature alumni who have completed their doctoral degree and are fulfilling the mission of the Leadership Alliance as leaders and role models diversifying the research workforce. This event is a component of the Leadership Alliance Virtual Professional Development Program, a new initiative that Leadership Alliance partners created to ensure skill building, networking, and exposure to graduate programs for students from across the country. I'd like to acknowledge and thank my team and colleagues at Brown University, Chaminade University in Honolulu, Weill Cornell Medical College, and Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine for their efforts in creating this program. Today's guest speaker is Dr. David Castro, full-time manager in the Global Analytical and Microbiological Services Division in Ecolab. In 1999, David Castro graduated from the University of Puerto Rico, Piedras, with a bachelor's degree in chemistry. In 2005, he defended his PhD dissertation titled Collisions and Reactions of N-propanol with Liquid in Physical Chemistry at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. That same year, he joined the Research Development and Engineering Department at what is now known as Nalco Water, an Ecolab company. As a scientist, he designed and conducted experiments to study the effects of novel chemistries in the production efficiency of paper and the properties of the final product. Two specific areas of his research were paper sizing and Yankee coating formulations for the production of tissue and towel grades. Together with fellow researchers, Mr. Castro is part of at least 10 patents and patent applications in paper technologies. In June of 2019, he became a full-time manager in the Global Analytical and Microbiological Service Division in Ecolab. In this new capacity, Mr. Castro is part of a team that provides analytical services to the innovation pipeline of the company. So thank you to our speaker, and we encourage you all to ask questions in the live Q&A tool. We've also created a forum in our Google Classroom for further discussion after the session. Please join our network and connect with us on TLA Connect if you haven't done so already. So thank you, everyone. And with that, I would like to introduce Dr. David Castro.
Thank you very much, Thais. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Dr. Castro, would you like to give the audience an overview of your role at Ecolab and an overview of the company in general for those that may not be familiar?
Yeah. So let me start, first of all, again, by saying thank you for the invitation to speak to you and the audience. So my current role is, let's start with the present, and we can dive a little bit into the past and talk about Ecolab. Right now, I am a full-time manager, meaning I don't have any research responsibilities, scientific responsibilities any longer within the company. I have individuals that report to me. They are full-time researchers as part of the company within the Global Analytical and Microbiological Services. That division specifically takes care of providing all kinds of analytical services for the company. In particular, the section that I work with takes care of doing all the analytical work for the innovation pipeline. When I talk about innovation pipeline, what I mean is projects that have to do with new products and services that we are working on for the future. So these are things that are new and that may come in a few years from now and will be in the market in a few years from now. As part of that, we are literally inherently integrated in the innovation process of the company. The best example for that, and this dives a little bit into my past life within the company, is you have a paper services division that is working on new projects for new products and services for the paper industry. And as they work on that, they reach out to our group in the process of doing analysis, chemical analysis and stuff like that. With that, let me go a little bit bigger. Ecolab is a 50,000 strong employee international company. It is a Fortune 500 company. It has in the vicinity of $14–15 billion in earnings every year. And it has a significantly diversified portfolio of products and areas where it works and where it's present. Individuals like the people in this audience are not the direct customers of Ecolab. Basically, we make businesses with other companies. The most visible form of Ecolab is cleaning products, and you may find our cleaning products in places like Walmart or Marriott hotels, for example. But we have a significant, in the vicinity of 40–50% of our business is industrial services, like paper manufacture, mining, heavy industries, light industries, and stuff like that. Is that good?
Yes, thank you. So I want to start with actually a question that just came into the live Q&A, because I think it will help set the tone here. So the question is, how did you navigate between choosing academia versus industry? Why did you decide to go into industry?
That's a great question, and I think what I'm going to do in response to that is to turn the question around, and one has to wonder why we are thinking about going into academia as a future job prospect. And this is actually a topic that I have addressed with many friends of mine and colleagues and so on and so forth. I mean, if you think about what we're thinking about doing when we get a PhD, many of us are thinking about becoming professors. And that is in a bit kind of a result of the fact that that's what we have seen, and those are the models that we have seen. Very few of us have any experience whatsoever with other things out there. That includes me. When I was in graduate school, I didn't know what it was to be in industry. I decided to go into industry because it was a realistic option. There were recruiters going to university looking for individuals like me and others with the skills that we had to go into industry. It was a difficult offer to resist, let's put it that way, in many ways. And I don't regret a single step of that. What I really advise any of the individuals in this call is to look for opportunities to expose yourself to industry, such that when the time comes to make a decision, you have not only the academic path as a realistic option, but also an industry path or many other paths out there. How can we expose ourselves? Talk to people out there that are working in industry, for example. Sometimes alumni from the institution you're in are available out there to answer questions like the ones we're entertaining in this call. Sometimes you just have to knock on doors and inquire about summer internships, for example, in industry settings. Those things exist. And that way you really make yourself a favor by providing options, by putting options in front of you about what you want to do in the future.
Great. We have another question from a student who is interested in learning about patents, and given your experience, wants to know what types of new skills were you able to gain from being part of patent development, and were you able to apply them to other areas of your research or professional career?
Okay. That's a good question. And before I go into the specifics, let me talk a little bit about the process of getting patents. And when it comes to the US law, basically all it says in essence is that you have to have a reasonable idea that is different enough from what already exists out there. So the key word here is idea and differentiation from what already exists. A company like ours pursues patents because it's a way to protect your technology, your discoveries from the competition. You have a certain amount of time to practice your new idea, make money out of it, have exclusivity. After that, everybody else can practice that idea and make money with you or despite you or something like that. But so our practice is research and development is basically the core where things are born in many instances, not exclusively, where these new ideas come to fruition. The way we do this is by doing experiments. We come up with ideas of what we could do in order to improve a process or make things better. We go to the lab, we do the experiments, we see if they work. If they work, we make sure that we have differentiation. We go to our librarian and we do a patent search to make sure that nobody else has come up with a similar idea. And then once we have all of that, then what we do is we go to our legal department and say, hey, we got a new idea. And this is what it consists of. These are the experiments that we did. At that point, you join forces with the legal department, with the attorneys in what is called the prosecution of the patent. Basically, attorneys take over the process and they go to the patent office in the United States Patent and Trademark Office and say, we have an idea, and the clocks start with respect to filing those ideas and so on and so forth. And eventually, after a lot of time, and this is a process that takes a lot of time, you will either be granted a patent or not, for whatever the reason is. So that's, in summary, what the process is about. And I wanted to highlight two things of what I just said. One of them is you reach out to a librarian and you reach out to an attorney in the company. And what is important there is that all of a sudden you're talking not only to scientists, but you're talking to a librarian who's going to do a patent search, a very exhaustive patent search with a lot of tools that they have at hand to make sure that we have every single patent that exists in the area at hand, and we can evaluate and make sure that our idea is new enough and is compelling enough. And the second thing that we reach out to is, or the second person is the attorneys or the legal department. And there, I said something there that is important, that is that they take on the process. Basically, once you have an idea, once you are convinced that the idea is unique and new, then the legal department, the attorney, takes over. And I also said this is a long process. And what is important about all this is that you're collaborating with individuals that have very different backgrounds. The librarian knows how to go out there and look for information. And the attorney knows the law. He or she is the one who's going to lead the process with the patent office in the United States in particular, and other patent offices around the world, to find out whether this is something that we can obtain, a patent that we can obtain. So the key word here is collaboration, and it's very multidisciplinary more than anything else. And the important thing about this is you can envision yourself in different positions. You can get a bachelor's degree in science or in any other area and eventually become an attorney, or you can be a librarian yourself that becomes the person that goes after all this information out there with very, very sophisticated tools to identify whether indeed we have a good patent, a good idea in our hands. I hope that more or less answers the question.
Yes, thank you. And we have a lot of students who are curious about just working in industry in general. So I'm going to just ask a more general question that came from one of our students, which is, what are some of the pros and cons of working in industry?
Well, it's an interesting question because I went to, I did my bachelor's degree, I did my graduate degree, and then I went directly into industry. And unfortunately, I don't have a second life that I can compare to. The one thing that I'm going to say a couple of things. Actually, I should highlight, I am married to a faculty in a university. My wife is a faculty member in psychology, and that gives me, if anything, a second kind of proxy life into the academic life. So I'm going to start with the cons, and in a way they're personal. Some other people may bring other things that are not necessarily positive. Some of the cons is you're a little bit. This is going to sound a little bit bad, but I'm going to say it anyway. You're kind of owned by the company, and what do I mean by that? Publishing anything, for example, is basically has to be checked by the company. You can publish. Let me get that very clear. You can publish in every other journal out there, but the company has to filter it, has to make sure that there is no intellectual property that is revealed through those publications. Companies like ours is very very jealous of this kind of information. And there's a lot of filtering that goes on in any kind of publication or presentation that we make. So that's a little bit of a con compared to the academic life, where your life depends on publishing and you own your publishing. Nobody's going to filter that out. A pro of the industrial life, and this is a true statement, generally speaking, is that you're gonna, actually, I'm sorry, there was another con that I wanted to highlight. There is no such thing as June, July, and August. They exist like any other month of the year. I am, as I mentioned earlier, married to a faculty, and she is right now at work and working really hard. I know that academicians do work really hard every month of the year, but what is important about the industry is that those 3 months are like any other month. And if anything, and this is very important, what you get in industry is basically you don't have the scientific freedom, let's say. And again, that sounds a little bit worse than it really is. And I'm going to try to explain a little bit more. You don't have the scientific freedom that academics have. So let me say a good thing. A good thing about industry is that you have an opportunity to travel the world widely. Some people are very attracted to that kind of thing, and it's worth saying. Another thing that is very positive about industry, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is that there's very much interdisciplinary collaboration. You're working with patent attorneys, you're working with librarians, I mentioned, but then there's the business side. There's a lot of business that you're doing. You're serving a business, and you cannot forget that part. So there's a lot of different mindsets working in industry to make things happen.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now we have a few, I guess, more personal questions about your experience.
Right.
I have a lot of students from the University of Puerto Rico system joining us. So one question in particular from a UPR student is, what hardships did you endure when moving from Puerto Rico to Wisconsin?
All right, this is getting personal now. The good news is I am not shy of the personal questions, and I realize there's a big audience here, but I think it's important to get personal from time to time about this kind of things. I moved from Puerto Rico to Wisconsin, and it was not an easy move for various reasons. I was married at the time with my first wife. There you have something important. And that did not turn out good. I mean, we divorced while I was in graduate school, and that is a difficult part of my life when I was in graduate school. To go into a little bit less personal, I can tell you, and it's important for those University of Puerto Rico students to know, yes, language is difficult, and I speak Spanish as my first language, and all of a sudden I find myself in a place where English is the language left and right. And that challenge, the best thing you can do is to immerse yourself in it and to take it on head on. People will laugh, there's no question about it, but you laugh with them a little bit and laugh at yourself a little bit and take it easy. So that was an immediate challenge for sure. I still remember being a TA in my first semester with Wisconsin. So to put things in context, University of Wisconsin-Madison is a state university. And there is a significant number of students in Madison that are state students. So there are people that come from the rest of the state of Wisconsin. And some of them think that Madison is a huge city. For them, it's a big deal. And it's funny for them, they think that you have a very heavy accent or something like that. And it is true. But what is also true is that they also have an accent, and they come from these rural areas in Wisconsin, which, by the way, I love very much. But they also have an accent. And the truth is that we, in a way, have to laugh at each other a little bit in a good way, not in a negative way. So again, getting personal about this, yes, I came married, and that was a difficult transition overall. And yes, the language is going to be a challenge as well. Looking back, the least challenging part was actually getting there. It was actually everything that started as soon as the semester started with, you know, being a TA, having a family, and having my own classes as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and someone to build upon that wants to know how your experience as a minority helped shape your journey through graduate school and even in your professional life, in your current career.
Great question. So one of the things that I learned some time ago, if I'm not mistaken, it was from a certain guy called Barack Obama, that I think it is important to realize and to understand where we come from, but it is equally important to make sure that that doesn't determine where we're going. And as a minority, one of the things that happened to me was I became very good friends with a fellow graduate student who was from Venezuela. And this guy had the least Venezuelan name. Christoph Wise was his name. And he had some German family, or there's something there, you know, we're talking the 90s, a long time ago now. And this guy had this perfect English, and the key, and what I mean by perfect is he had absolutely no accent, which some people would argue that's not a good use of the adjective perfect, but anyway, that's another conversation. The point is that I had a very good friendship opportunity to speak Spanish most of the time with him, but I also had a great opportunity to speak English with him, and that connection still is present. He's still a good friend of mine, and I had with him the opportunity again to relax with my native language, Spanish, but also to learn other the new language, English. So that's a natural consequence of my identity. I'm Puerto Rican, 100%. Now in industry, and thinking about the last 15 years, I have been in industry for 15 years. It's interesting because there are not many Spanish-speaking individuals where I work. There are actually not many minorities where I work, which may trigger another set of questions, I am sure. But so that connection is not there. But at the same time, my best advice for anybody is dive in. You know, just take the challenge. There you are in an environment that is, you know, corporate America in many ways, and the best thing you can do is to dive in, take the challenge, and speak their language, learn their language, and so on and so forth.
And staying on that thread, I think that this question is particularly relevant. So how do you think that we can overcome lack of representation in your field and be more inclusive?
Wow, wow. How much time do we have? That's a great question. You know, there is a concept, and I want to emphasize it's a concept, not a law or anything like that, but it's a concept called affirmative action. And the concept of affirmative action is nothing but you have to give the opportunity. If the opportunity is not given, if the opportunity is not taken, if the opportunity is not demanded sometimes, you bet that nothing is going to happen. And there are many ways in which this can happen. I work in a company, it's corporate America, no doubt about that part. I also work in a scientific field. And we need those institutions as part of our overall society to contribute to the opportunities in a positive way. And by the way, I'm kind of smiling to myself because this is a conversation that I was having a couple of weeks ago with a friend of mine who happens to be, is a colleague of mine, who happens to be African American, and he was the one who brought up many of these ideas. Not necessarily, I'm not saying that the ideas are new in my head, but I was entertaining these ideas with him. That's really what it comes down to. The opportunities have to be there. We have to actively create these opportunities. We have to actively give these opportunities. That's very short term. long-term, there's something else going on, and that is there are not a lot of minorities that are entering into professions like ours, and we have to continue contributing to that. And there are not many minorities that are being well educated in professions like ours. For whatever reason, this is another big, long topic of discussion. And we're talking about all the way from elementary school through, intermediate and high school. And we have to create more of those opportunities, because at the present time, I am a hiring manager. We have a position that we're going to be opening soon. And, the vast majority of the candidates that I'm going to see in those positions, applying to those positions, are not going to be from underrepresented groups. They're not going to be African Americans or Latinos. They're going to be, you can imagine, Caucasian or Asiatics. And that is good, but it will be nice to have a wider pipeline that I see as a hiring manager. And I cannot give an opportunity to a position like that if the opportunity is not real, it's not present.
And what do you think for students who want to pursue, careers in industry? How do you feel having a PhD helps in terms of getting their foot in the door and, getting to more senior level positions?
Yeah, I think what happens with the whole PhD thing is that, basically you cannot go any higher than that. Some people get, postdocs out there and stuff like that. But in terms of degrees, that's the highest degree you can get. We call it terminal degree. What it does is that once you get to that level, it basically opens the door to many other things at a relatively earlier time. I spent the first 14 years of my time in industry in research in great measure because I like it, because I enjoy that part. But then during the past 4 years or so, I have been transitioning to a managerial position. And currently I am a full-time manager, meaning I don't have any more research responsibilities. There is no doubt in my head that I could have transitioned into a managerial position 8 years ago. And this is, or 10 years ago. And this is not to say that there is a problem with research. It's just that the opportunities for doing something else as managerial was there, more present for me than other individuals that didn't have a PhD. Having said that, it's not my intention to say here that if you don't have a PhD, you cannot get into a managerial position. That is not the case. It's just that, again, the degree kind of opens the opportunities slightly earlier and more out there, more positions out there. I want to take this conversation even further back and say that with a PhD, there's a number of skills, and we can go into those skills if we want to. There's a number of skills you're going to gain that are extremely important to whatever it is that we do out there. And for me, at the top of the list is the ability to communicate an idea. If you have an ability to communicate an idea, let me get this very clear. You don't need a PhD for this. But if you want to practice a little bit further, I tell you the PhD experience will certainly help you. If you can communicate an idea, it can be scientific, it can be business, it can be marketing, it can be information technology, whatever you want to call it. If you can communicate an idea, you have a future, and that goes a very, very long way.
Thank you. Yeah, and in terms of skills, so we have another question specific to skills. In more recent years, more and more fields in the sciences and engineering are requiring students to learn coding, specifically MATLAB and Python as examples. What is your experience with computer science during your PhD and in your current job?
Interesting. So I did have, I actually have to say I fell in love with computer programming when I was an undergrad, but that was a very end of my undergrad years. I took assembly language classes in C++, and that was really interesting. But of course, that was at the end, and move on. I have very little exposure to coding in graduate school. There was some exposure, but it was mostly understanding what other code said, not necessarily creating my own code. And then when I went on to work in industry, I certainly had my fair share of having to debug and understand what certain codes out there are doing and stuff like that. Having said that, that is my specific experience. Let me go back to something I said earlier. I'm a hiring manager. That means that sometimes I have positions open in my group, and I go out and look at resumes, I interview people, and so on and so forth. Normally what happens is you have a position open and you look for somebody that fits that position. In a group like mine, the group in which I work, we, for the most part, look for analytical chemists or people with a chemistry background. Normally what happens is you hire an individual because of that background. If that individual happens to have experience with coding, that is a plus, but not a necessary condition to be hired. And I've seen this again and again and again. It is a plus, and it's not going to hurt in any form or fashion what you eventually do in your job, but you will very likely be hired because of what the position that is open is demanding or is requiring. So if you happen to be a chemist and you apply for a chemist position, it is that chemistry background what is going to give you the entry point. If a position is for a computer programmer, it's that computer programming skills that is going to open the door.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, after I finished my postdoc, I actually went into healthcare analytics as a manager, and I did not have a computer science background, but I ended up managing analysts who were programmers. And so I kind of picked it up and taught myself SQL and just how to run reports in various analytical tools. And I would encourage anyone that has that opportunity to take the time to learn, because it definitely makes you a valuable asset to the team if you can understand the analytics behind the data, and if you're able to do at least some minimal programming, it's helpful. So I would say definitely take the initiative if the opportunity presents itself.
And if I may add, I'm going to bounce off something that you just said, and that is the idea that you learn after the fact. And one of the things that the PhD experience or the graduate school experience is going to give you is a little bit of the confidence to learn something new. And there, many times what happens in graduate school is that we get into this very, very narrow research area, and our thesis is, about this very narrow area. In fact, when you defend your thesis, you're going to be the world expert on that particular topic. There's no doubt about that part. Later on, what is going to happen is you're going to be exposed to such a large number of things, including computer programming. And the question is, can I learn some of it? Can I learn the basics such that I can do, serve whatever the purpose is of the moment? And what the PhD experience sometimes gives you a little bit of that confidence. Hey, I can learn this thing. Give me some time here, and I'll get my feet wet in that area and go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit to talk about COVID-19 and the impact that it's had on your business. So we have a question from a student specific to that. With the COVID-19 outbreak, in your opinion, working for a company such as Ecolab, that's amongst its primary concerns includes ensuring hygiene and infection prevention, what was the biggest barrier posed by this unexpected pandemic? And how would you say that some of your experience has helped your company cope with that?
Good question. There are many levels to that question. I hope to remember all of the levels by the time I get done here. There are many challenges. The first challenge is from a company perspective, it was very clear from the top management that we did not want to become a center of contagion of the disease, and basically everybody was sent home. I am at home, and research got an exception, meaning we were considered essential. And although research was considered essential and we could all be there, only a small section, in fact, the part that I work with is the only one that is in the facilities on a daily basis. The rest of research is out at home. Right now, they are at home, and we're talking about months now that everybody has been at home. We have been called the biggest company behind the reopening of the economy that is not known. And what it means is precisely what the question presented. We have a lot to do with hygiene and prevention of diseases and stuff like that. The most well-known product that we have, well-known because it is out there and you can see it, is actually those hand sanitizers. You put your hand under it and you get a squirt. The company is the market lead in that. We're not as obvious and evident as Purell, that's the competition, because our biggest customer happens to be hospitals. So we have a huge amount of market share in hospitals, and we provide all those hand sanitizers. I am dwelling on the hand sanitizer because that was a very clear, obvious challenge for our company and for every other company out there that does hand sanitizers. The demand went up by a factor of 7 to 8 times. In other words, there is, if today you're doing that 100 times a year, all of a sudden you're doing it 700, 800 times a year. You're getting a little bit of that squirt to clean your hands. I said that this is a challenge not only for Ecolab, but every other company out there, because we didn't have all the components. The world did not have all the components that go into the formulation. And one of the things that happened was that the World Health Organization came up with a very simplistic formula, the WHO formula for hand sanitizers. And we started doing that as well. We were actually manufacturing that without making any profit, just to help. We were putting our time and energy into that just to satisfy the demand for hand sanitizers. And third, more specifically to my job, because not all of the components of the formulation existed in the world, all of a sudden you have scientists reformulating the hand sanitizer formula such that we can satisfy the demand with components that are present and available in the market. And one of the organization that I work with basically is in charge of making sure that the components that come in a given formulation, the components that go into a given formulation, is what they say they are. If something is 99% pure, then what is that 1% that is not pure? Can we account for it in such a way that we make sure that it's not interfering, that it's not an unhealthy component to the formula, so on and so forth. So I'm dwelling on the hand sanitizer because it's an obvious thing. Everybody sees the hand sanitizer out there. But the other side of the story, and this is the fun part of the story, is toilet paper. I was in the business of toilet paper and paper towel before being in this area. We basically provide the chemistries that are used for the production of that kind of paper. And what we know happened is that Americans went out there looking for toilet paper, and by golly, we're going to get that toilet paper. And it basically created a demand, a shift in the demand. Because the truth is that I said earlier, we're not at work. That means that we're not using toilet paper or the paper to dry your hands in the bathroom at work. So all of a sudden, many of these towel and tissue manufacturers are having to change their production from what we call away from home to at-home products. And that's why there was a delay in the availability of toilet paper, but I think that is now resolved. And I have nothing to do with it. I'm out of it right now, but that's a little bit of two of the areas where the company itself was challenged as we went along in this pandemic. Having said that, I want to emphasize for the audience, I'm sure, and I hope that everybody will agree with me, this is a health crisis. This is a public health crisis. People are suffering, people are dying, and it's a very serious matter. And we can only hope that we can do our part in helping hospitals, in helping every other customer of ours that cleans the surface. We hope that we can help them in the process of coming back online in the economy, again, as long as this pandemic has subsided, and we're contributing to the subsiding of this pandemic.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're really tied to, the mission of the company and enjoy doing what you're doing there. So one of the questions from a student that came in is, what about Ecolab made you want to work there? And how is the company culture?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question. I understood about company culture, but I missed the other
So
part.
what about the company made you want to work there? What was your deciding factor for choosing Ecolab?
Yeah. I tell you one thing. Let me tell you a little bit of my story. So I started in Nalco in 2005, and in 2011, Ecolab acquired Nalco. And today our name is Nalco Water and Ecolab Company. Having said all that, we are Ecolab. We are one company. And to be exact in all of this, I happen to work for Ecolab because it's the section, our division provides services for the entire company. So formally speaking, I work for Ecolab. The answer to that question has absolutely, my answer to that question has absolutely nothing to do with 2005 when I joined the company. I think I joined the company because it was a job, and I'm not gonna, say much more about that. But today, the company has grown in me the way I was not expecting. There's a very positive culture. I'm not going to show you the list of awards that the company has for, best places to work, high equality index for LGBTQ individuals. I mean, the number of ways in which the company is celebrated is very positive. I said a moment ago, there are not many minorities where I work, and I should be specific in that there are not many. I don't find a lot of minorities within research, and that is a problem, and we recognize it. But the rest of the company on the business side is very, very diverse. The number of people in the field representing the company in the field with our customers is significantly more diverse. We also have a problem with, and I'm going to say a challenge with the number of women in the company. And by saying that we have a challenge is that they're not as represented, they're not at the 50% level in the company. And that in part is because this is a company that is very engineering, very chemistry, and very microbiology heavy. In other words, we don't have as many women overall because this areas, particularly chemistry and engineering, do not produce a lot of women out there. One of the reasons I am able to openly talk about these challenges, some people would call it deficiencies, is because we're open about it, and we talk about these things, and we openly talk about the fact that we have to bring in more women and more people of underrepresented groups. And not only we have to bring them, but we have to do what we need to, whatever it is that we need to do culture-wise in order to retain them. In fact, that's one of the biggest problems right now. There's a lot of companies out there that have a very, very powerful magnet in attracting people of underrepresented groups, but then those individuals don't last very long. Why they don't last very long? Because the culture is not exactly conducive for these individuals to feel comfortable, to feel that they belong, so on and so forth. So I feel like we have a very good, very positive culture today. Still, there is a lot of room to grow. Our company is not the only one. This is a problem that happens in a lot of companies out there. Still, I will be the first cheerleader of our company, not only because of where we are, but because we recognize the need to go beyond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we at the Leadership Alliance are also trying to, obviously, one of our principles is to increase minorities in both academia and industry. And so this question I find particularly pertinent to what we're currently working on, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on it. How do you think we can promote research between academia and industry? Specifically, what do you suggest we do to obtain funding and partnerships to advance our students in particular research fields. So again, going back to your comment about, not having a lot of women in engineering and chemistry, how do you think that companies can start to work with academic institutions to help reduce that, that problem?
So there is, I think part of my answer is I'm going to make reference to a program that exists in the University of Minnesota, and it's called iPrime. I encourage anybody to Google that, iprimeumn.edu, and you will learn a bit about that program. That is nothing but a consortium of industries working with departments of chemistry, engineering, material sciences at the University of Minnesota. And what basically the model consists of the companies that are part of the consortium giving money to the university to conduct research, and then there are a number of meetings that take place during the course of the year where there are conversations about the research that is done in the university. One of the opportunities, part of the consortium, one of the opportunities that come out of that is for individuals from a participating company to become a research fellow in the university itself. I did that for a year in 2014, and what that did was I had access to a number of research instruments and tools and stuff like that, but probably more importantly, I got to know a few graduate students, and I worked with them hand in hand in the project that I was working on. And there are many things that may come out of that. For example, these are individuals that become high in your mind when you're looking for a prospective candidate for a position that you may have open in the future. And that is the best example that I can provide. There are other things that can be done. I know that Leadership Alliance promotes this research experience in the summer. I was part of one of those experiences in 1998. That is my initial connection with the Leadership Alliance. I think companies have to open up their doors for individuals, undergraduate students to have that exposure, even graduate students to have that exposure. I can tell you that we have, as state-of-the-art technology in our laboratories, and it is not impossible for students from the institutions associated with the Leadership Alliance to become involved with us.
Thank you. So there are some students out there who'd like to know, just in terms of, starting a career in industry, given your experience as a manager, what key things does your company, I guess, and also you in general, look for when hiring? And what can undergraduates do to help prepare themselves more for jobs in industry?
Good question. I mentioned earlier, normally what happens in industry is you have a position and you're looking for somebody that meets the criteria of that position. And that is a very general statement. So in a way, your question is, what are those tangentials that help you hone in and become, top of the list kind of candidate situation? Personality goes a long way. I said earlier, the communication of an idea is one of the most important skills that you can learn in any area. It doesn't matter what the PhD is going to be or whatever the degree is. Communication of an idea goes a long, long way. Just imagine one of the smartest individuals in history. I don't know, Isaac Newton. If he was not able to put the second law of motion, force is equal to mass times the acceleration, in that simple equation, if he was not able, had he not been able to communicate that very simple idea in that very elegant, simple equation, we wouldn't be talking about him right now. The same thing goes on in the process of having an interview with a candidate. Communication of an idea. One of the first things in that same line, one of the first things that we see as hiring managers is a bunch of resumes. I can tell you I'm not alone. I am not alone when I tell you that if you find a typo in a resume, that doesn't go well. It really doesn't go well. And it goes back to the idea of communicating something. So written communication, oral communication go a long, long way with fitting into that job that you may want.
And again, kind of going back to your personal experience, what inspired you to move into corporate life? Were you always interested in going into industry, or is it something that you learned later as you were pursuing your PhD?
There's a very long range of experience out there. Mine, I mentioned to you, you know, it was a job or whatever at the time. But one of the things that happened for us is that the guy who became my hiring manager, the person that hired me, I met him during my first year in graduate school. So this is 4, 5, 6 years before I graduated. I knew him. And what he's doing is he's just visiting professors, and he's connected with the professors and with the students. And, you know, 5 years later, when I'm looking for a job, 4 or 5 years later, when I'm looking for a job, the guy is more than happy to entertain me as one of the persons interviewing. I'm saying this, and of course, it's my very personal experience, but what I invite anybody in the audience to do is to extrapolate and think about who are the individuals around you who are looking for that prospective future employee. Is it industry versus academia? Consider the fact that our experience when we are in an academic environment is that our experience is very limited. We really haven't seen what that other person may have to offer. And explore, be open to the ideas out there as you step into the things you're going to be doing, whether it's at the undergraduate level or the graduate level. In my case, again, there was that person that was kind of coming and going, looking and learning about prospective future students and employees.
And in the current position that you hold, you mentioned that you don't personally conduct research anymore. But you obviously are a manager and you have people reporting to you. So one of the students wants to know, do you miss the hands-on aspect of research, or?
Oh, absolutely. This is, at least in our company, I don't know how widespread this expression is, but we say that we step away from the bench when we make this decision. I have been in a managerial kind of role for the past 4 years. And what that means is that I started having people reporting to me while still having research responsibilities. And what that does is that it still gives you a foot in the lab, and you have a foot on the managerial side. And what that does is that it allows you to get a feeling for whether you like it or not, whether you feel competent on the managerial side or not. Again, I was hired as a researcher, and that was the expectation initially. That would always be the expectation, that you conduct the job that you were hired to do. With time, you evolve into other things. 14, well, at that time, it would have been 11 years after I was hired, you become a different person, you change, you have other interests. I worked for a great company that gave me the opportunity to have a feeling for the managerial side. You step away from the science that happened in June of last year. And I can tell you that I absolutely missed that. In fact, what all of a sudden happens is that you're learning about the wonderful things that everybody else is doing, because I get this monthly research reports from the people reporting to me. I read what they're doing. It's like, oh man, I'm not doing any of this anymore. I'm not thinking this way anymore. These guys are doing that. Guys and gals are doing that, not me anymore. So I am just salivating on a daily basis over what other people do. But I still love what I do. Now more than anything else, I am thinking about what is the dynamic in the group? How do people work with each other? And how do collaborations take place? And that's a different kind of thinking. It's a different kind of challenge.
Thank you, David. And we have, I'm just going to wrap it with one more question here because we are short on time. But one of the students asked, what roles do you feel, or from your experience, are available for graduating students with PhDs in industry? What types of positions are you seeing? And is there anything that students can do to prepare for, getting their foot in the door there?
Yeah, I think we have mentioned a number of things. You know, kind of a summer research internships will be a great way for people in a given company to get to know you. It's a way for people in that company to, do referrals of you to other places. It doesn't have to be that you end up working with that company. The one thing that sometimes is not highlighted in all this process is that one of the things you get through the internship is that you yourself learn whether you like that or not, whether you like that environment or not. You're doing yourself a great favor if it is the case that you don't like it, and move away to something else. Move away before you keep on going in that direction to realize that you're miserable. Might as well move away if you realize that you don't like it. If you like it, then go ahead, plow through, ask for recommendations, talk to people, get on the phone with people. These days we do a lot more phone conversations than face-to-face, but go at it. I have the last thing I'm going to say, take one idea and think about whether you can communicate that idea. That goes a long, long way. And notice that this has nothing to do with chemistry or physics or biology or business or humanities. By the way, my undergrad, 90 or 80% of my undergrad is in philosophy, but that's another conversation and we don't have time. But if you can take one idea and communicate it well, you're in business. You're in big business.
All right, well, thank you so much, Dr. Castro, for your time. I know there were a number of student questions that we did not get to. So Sam will follow back up if you have time to respond to those students or leave your contact information. That would be extremely helpful. And thank you to our students who participated tonight, and we will see you again next Monday.